Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew here, back for our 5 p.m. Eastern build review show. It is Tuesday, September 10th of 2024. We do the show Monday through Friday, and this is the show where I bring users builds up on stream, giving them live, personalized feedback, advice, opinions about their contest selection, decisions they're making, and trying to help them create stronger sim ROI portfolios here. So it should be a fun show. Pretty excited about it. And if anybody else wants to sign up for the show, they like the content that they see, you could always drop your DK username in the office hours channel in our Discord server. We do have a full show today, and then we have a couple people signed up for tomorrow as well, but still some spots open for tomorrow. So pretty excited, plenty to get through. So let's jump right in. Our first person today is going to be Interrogator from the Discord. So let's get them up here. And let's see what they are playing. So we got, let's go back, NFL. Okay, so played the main slate, played the Rams slate. Looks like they also played the Monday Night Football Showdown. Why don't we go back to the main slate? I think this will be probably like the most helpful. And we're going to start in the contest tab as always. All right. So let's see what we see here. Contest selection looks really good. So starting with all of the low stakes stuff, right? We see plenty of single entries and 3 maxes here. And I think this is great. So this is like very, very ideal contest selection. Very happy with how it looks. So let's go in here and look at what's a good contest we can look at. I'm hoping we can look at this quarter jukebox. So this is one we were looking at a lot yesterday with the other reviews that we did. We're still having trouble with some of these big contests, but team is like putting an emphasis on resolving that. So in the meantime, I know that the quarter was working yesterday, so we'll stick with it. We reviewed 3 users yesterday, and they all graded out like 35% ROI and then 2 in the 60% ROI range with this in this contest. So let's see how Interrogator did as well. All right, 20 entries here. Going to filter for 20. Going to sort by sim ROI. So they did pretty solid, right? 46% sim ROI. It's really, really strong start. Let's come in here and look at some of these metrics. So average salary, pretty high. Sim ROI, solid. Uniqueness, good. Sim average score, about 126. I will say that, you know, the one person that we saw yesterday who graded out like 35% sim ROI had a similar sim average score. And then the 2 players that graded out in like the 60-65% range had a sim average score of 128. It seemed to matter a little bit there. So I will mention it considering that it did come up on yesterday's show. It was something that we saw different between the few users there. So that could be something to look into here. But overall, very, very strong start. Very, very strong set of lineups. Let's jump into the build because it seems like they ran all of their lineups together and then swapped them all together. So let's look at the original set of lineups here. Okay, so default minimax salaries, no filters or rules at all. No filters. Looks like they used multi-fill. No uniques. No min or max exposures in the all tab. Nothing with quarterbacks. Nothing with defenses. Nothing with stacks. No games. No team stacks. Very, very hands-off approach, right? And we could see that, hey, taking a hands-off approach, grading out really well in the post-contest sim, right? I think that's all great. This is somebody who is using the tools kind of the way that they were designed, where it's like, hey, we want this to be quick, easy, and give you strong lineups. That way you can spend your time enjoying the games and sweating out your lineups. And then you come in here, re-optimizes with a late swap. I think that's really, really good. So all in all, there's not a ton to say here. And it's because they're doing a lot of the right things already out of the gate. If I were to make any suggestion here, I would say that in an effort to get sim average score higher, typically from 48.5 to 49,000 and try that and just see how it goes, right? You could try that 1 week, see if that it could be, right, is if you look at this list of lineups, Quarter Jukebox is a little bit further down on the list. So it's possible that some of these contests higher, closer to the top, are just taking a little bit of the better lineups, which you want, right? That's why like these lineups have higher prize pools, higher percent to first, all that kind of stuff. So that could be like a secondary effect of just the way the contests are ordered. So I don't want to read into it too much, but if I had to give any minor suggestion, that's what I would give. All right. Good stuff there to get us started. Next person up is going to be Gatekeeper. And we will get Gatekeeper up on the screen here momentarily. And we'll keep the show rolling. All right. Let's see what we got. All right. Bringing the screen up here. Waiting for this build to load. We'll jump over to the contest tab right now. Let's close this. Okay, so let's see here. So it seems like this person wants to be a lot heavier on the single entry and 3 max side of things. I think that's okay. If that's your style and, you want to be like, we talk about entering like 25 to 50% single entry and 3 max, and then 50 to 75% of your bankroll allocation goes to 20 max, 150 max. This person seems a lot closer to 50-50. And if that's their style, that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. One thing I'll say is that it seems like they skipped a couple of like the good low stakes contests. Like I don't see the large dime time. I don't see the mini max. I would still include those in your portfolio, even if you're going to duplicate those lineups, just because they're good contests to play and you have access to them, and you won't have access to them forever. So I would always, people like, hey, when do I stop playing a contest? It's like when you can't play it anymore, when the contest is literally not in your lobby, you should play it until you can't do that anymore. So that's what I would one small change I would recommend there. But aside from that, contest selection looks okay. Don't have a huge problem with it. So let's go and look at one of these contests. And let's look at the quarter jukebox. Let's stick with the trend here. All right. Just waiting for the contest data to load. Should load. Maybe we're just looking at it. All right. There we go. So Skolman, 20 lineups. Boom. Sort by sim ROI. Okay, so this is our first user that we've looked at here who has a negative sim ROI in this contest. Now, biggest thing that stands out to me right away, right, is we've been seeing everybody in like the 126 to 128 sim average score area. This user has a sim average score of 117 points. So for some reason, they're sacrificing a ton of projection here. I don't exactly know why, but we're going to figure out why. And what I would say is if this number were higher, chances are you wouldn't be grading out negative. So this is the biggest thing that we have to fix. We just have to figure out kind of why it happened to start with and what we can do about it. So let's jump into this build. Okay, so first thing I notice is that we have 6 rules here. So a lot of different groups here, okay? So a lot of groups. No filters. Sending lineups to the favorites. We'll go check out the favorites tab. Okay, so there are a lot of minimax exposures. So this person is very, very opinionated about who they want to play in their lineups. I mean, we see tons of minimax exposures here. In my opinion, from what I could tell, it seems like this user is being a little bit too hands-on, and they are actually hurting their lineups a little more than they're helping them. So what I would suggest here is probably to loosen the minimax exposures to start. I think that this probably has a lot. I think that the minimax exposures have more to do with the low sim average score than the rules do. So that's probably where I would start, is loosening some of these restrictions. You know, we don't really recommend setting them in the first place. But if you're going to, I wouldn't focus on setting so many. You know, the way that we really recommend users do it is don't set any minimax exposures, run your lineups, adjust your min uniques, see how close it can get you to what you want, and then make some fine-tune adjustments to a handful of players. But really, like, you know, I think that's the best way to use it. I think when we get into setting so many, we are setting almost too many here, but it's my opinion. So I'm not 100% sure why there are more lineups in the favorites than there are entries into contests. Seems a little weird. But that's just one thing I'm noticing. I don't think that's going to have a lot of bearing here. So I think the biggest takeaways are to rethink some of your rules and minimax exposures. And I think that the contest selection is okay, but it really comes down to these adjustments here are probably a little too aggressive, and to loosen those up to allow the sim to do its thing a little bit more, help you get to some better lineups. And I think that you'll be fine with a really small change. So those are the biggest changes I would be looking to make heading into week 2. All right. Good stuff so far. Going to be hopping over to our next user here. I like Toen is up next. And let's go over to the main from Sunday. All right. Starting the contest tab as always. A lot of entries here, right? 588 entries. A lot of action. 51x optimizer satellites. So they're splitting their builds up into different things. I think that's fine to do. Playing a lot of live finals. So this is probably somebody who like doesn't have access to low stakes anymore. So, you know, it's pretty hard to like comment on any decisions here. You know, somebody like this also is probably playing like a ton of satellites, right? I mean, when you're playing like lots and lots of satellites, you can win, you know, tickets to big contests like all the time. So I'm not going to make any recommendations here. You know, if you actually look like their split is actually decent, right? Even at the stakes that they're playing, you know, you see some single entry in 3 max, but then you see 150 max in here as well, right? Like if you take this $33 150 max and then the $9 150 max, you know, that probably makes up like quite a good chunk of their action. And then they balance it out with all these other contests as well. So there's, you know, a lot going on here, but you can still see the split and they're balancing out their contest selection just at a different level. All right. So I think we will be best served studying. I'm going to say the slant here. Let's go to the slant. I was considering the slant or the bootleg, but I think the slant gives us a little bit more persons who probably max this out. So a little bit more people to compare against. Is this live leaderboard? No, it's not. Okay. I wonder if their username's the same. Okay, I like Towing perfect here. So they're up here. So let's go to entries equal to 150, sort by sim ROI. So this is really, really good, right? I like Towing 4th highest sim ROI, 30+% here in the top 4. You know, I think that this is really, really solid, right? Now, if we come in here and look, salaries are pretty consistent. Uniqueness is good. I'd say that the biggest difference, right, is that their sim average score is slightly lower than some of these other players. Like we see 127, 125, 127, 123, almost 124. And it's not to say that there aren't people around that range that are grading out. It's just that the players that are a little bit higher are just grading out a little bit more. But then, you know, you can look on the bottom side too. I'm like, hey, there's someone with 131, you know, grading out worse. So this could be like a little bit noisy here. But just kind of like from the other reviews, right? Like, hey, we're seeing like 126, 128, like grade out super well. So it gets a little bit harder when you're playing 150 lineups as opposed to 20. I will say that, right? It's like, hey, we're looking at a 20 max. You know, if we took I like Towen's top 20, maybe that is the sim average score, right? But when you add in all these other lineups, that kind of lowers it. We kind of see it lowered across the board here. So always remember, right? In theory, you're putting in your best lineup first, and then your second best, and then your third best. So every lineup after the first is a little bit worse. So when you have 150 lineups, we could see the sim average score come down a little more than if we were just playing your top 20 into this contest. So this all looks, really strong. I don't know how much we're going to see here, but where did they fill this? Okay, so from the 150 by 33, I don't know if they put the same lineups into this or they did 300, but let's go see. And then they even have a couple more 150s. Okay. So my initial impression is that they actually used Old Saber Sim here because we see the contest omega ratio. So that gives me the impression that they used Old Saber Sim and they used risk adjusted ROI. It also seems to me like they built 150 for the $33 and then they let that have like a trickle down effect into some of their other contests. This is kind of the same idea that we were just talking about, where it's like, when should I stop playing a contest? It's like, if a certain contest, the prize to first, isn't significant, isn't going to move the needle for you too much, it's not that you shouldn't play it. You could just duplicate those lineups, right? So their focus here is this $33, but they're also entering the $9, the $5, like whatever, right? They're still taking the time to play those, but they're just taking the same 150 lineups and putting it into all of them. So this would be an example, would be somebody who like plays the $3.20 max and they like that contest and they have access to the dime time, but they don't really care about it too much. You should still play it, and then you can just duplicate your lineups into that contest if you so choose, right? So if that's the approach they want to take, then that's okay. So that's just like, something, this is an example of that for other people who aren't sure whether or not they want to do that, right? All right, see a filter here, ROI greater than 0. Looks good. See uniques up to 4. Exposures. So the only thing I would be careful about here, which I'm not sure if you're taking these lineups and filling them somewhere else or what, because it's on like download CSV. So like maybe you're just exporting the lineups or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen a big difference in lineup metrics between like uniques of 2, uniques of 3, uniques of 4. Just to be safe, I would come in here and add in 2 aggregate metrics, contest sim, ROI, and average projection, just so you can understand the effect that moving this uniques has on your lineup set, right? So like when I go from 3 uniques to 4, what am I actually sacrificing? And you could see that and make a more conscious decision about whether or not you want to make that change, right? So like mini unique of 1, average ROI is at 86%. Average projection is at 123.9. And then at mini uniques of 4, wow, it's about the same. So that's good, right? And I don't know if you had these on and they weren't showing, or you turned them off or something like that, but having that, at least myself, it makes me feel so much better knowing I am aware of the effect that changing this has. I think 4 is a great number. If you can get similar metrics at mini unique of 1 versus 4, I would use 4 for sure. But just, I think it's worth having them up to make sure you're not taking some big dip and you don't know about it, right? So all in all, that looks really good. Small, like I see one adjustment to minimax exposures, a little more to the quarterbacks. Just minimum exposures, though, making sure they get to a couple of players here. And these aren't even bad, right? I mean, matching ownership on Fields, matching ownership on Lawrence, a little like 1.5x on Josh Allen, like 2x on Derek Carr. But these are minor, right? Like five of these are all single digit, or 6 of these are all single digit, mostly matching ownership. So they're just basically saying, hey, I want to at least have as many shares of the field, as many shares as the field of players X, Y, and Z. I think that's totally cool. So yeah, I mean, all in all, really strong sim ROI. Making some minor tweaks and putting in some opinions, totally cool. Building strong lineups. I mean, top 4 sim ROI are in a very tough contest. And the only thing I would add is adding in some aggregate measures to make sure that you don't do anything by accident that ends up hurting your lineups more than helping you when you're trying to up those uniques. But really strong stuff. I like towing, and this is a, really, really good example of somebody to study here. All right. Next person up is going to be KJ. And we're just getting KJ up on the screen. All right, let's get the screen back up here. And then let's jump back to the main slate for KJ. Starting the contest tab, as always. So as far as contest selection, max split as far as like dollars used here, right? It's about like they're right around like 20-25% single entries. But I will say that, it seems like they skipped a lot, right? So don't skip those lower ones, right? Play the $1, the $2, the $3, the $4, the $5, single entries, 3 maxes, right? Play them all. If you want to play the $12, great. Play those too. But you can even duplicate these 2 lineups into those lower dollar ones if you want, right? So I have to say, like, do not skip them because they're good contests to play. Sorry, I had to sneeze. All right. So, oh man. So we're not going to be able to review these big ones. So we can go and look at their single entry lineup. How did they fill this? They filled it from swap 1. I don't know where it was originally built. Let's see if they're in here. KJ, JK. Or I think this is actually it. JK, KJ, JK. I'm almost positive this is it. So one of the reasons I don't really like doing flashback and single entries is studying like one individual lineup is like so hard. So this one single entry that they built, negative 13%. I think if you play a lot of single entries, you can look at enough contests to get kind of an idea. Kind of the same way I was talking about like showdowns, studying showdowns over like a big group of them on office hours today. But I'm looking at the other single entry now. Okay, so they're both about the same here, right? So let's go and look at the bigger one. Go to users. So everybody entered one lineup. Highest sim ROIs are in the hundreds of percents here. So like, what is going to be the biggest difference between somebody like this and somebody who's rating out like negative, right? And I think I saw it. I'm almost positive. So, sounding like a broken record probably, but this comes up over and over again, right? Sim average score down at like 122. And these other players like 131, 134, 130, 132, 136. So for whatever reason, playing a lineup just like a little bit too low projected. Looks like Kyler's here saying pretty sure is build 2. So let's jump over to build 2 and just see what it looks like. What contests are selected? So maybe they built them all together. They are using target contest ROI. Okay. So I have an idea here. And maybe this actually has a lot to do with it. So this is an example of somebody who's using single fill where they're building all the lineups together. Now, I actually really, really don't like this for a very specific reason. What's going to happen is that the lineup ROIs get averaged across the 5 contest sims, right? So you can actually see this. Go down to the bottom of a lineup and then start scrolling in this lineup pane. And then you can see what the different ROIs are for the different contests. Now, one thing I've seen, this one's probably not a good example, but I've seen drastic differences in ROIs from one contest to another. And maybe this one's like a decent example. So you see this ROI up at the top, right? Under the actual. These are the average metrics that we're using to grade the lineup. But then these are the actual values being from each contest sim, right? So if we look at the single entry ROI for this lineup, which I think is like lineup 4, the single entry ROI is about 26%. But if I go and look at the Millie Maker ROI, the Millie Maker ROI is about 90%. So basically, if this lineup ends up going in the single entry, it actually doesn't perform that well in that contest, right? So this is why I'm not a huge fan of selecting all the contests together and letting them be averaged. I've seen extreme examples where lineup is like 400% in one contest and 27% in another. And that is just like, such a massive difference. So the other thing is, like, if you're using one unique too, if you're not even being opinionated on the amount of uniques or like anything like that kind of going on here, they have a few small max exposures, but fairly unopinionated. I would either do one of two things. I would fill them individually. So I'd go through one at a time, filling them and then moving on to the next contest and then filling that one and then moving on and then moving on. Or I would just use the multi-fill option. And then, when you do the multi-fill option, it's going to use each specific contest sim as it goes through this list. You just order it however you want. And you're just going to get more lineups that are more specific to the type of contest you're playing. Like, yeah, maybe, this 122 projected lineup does actually do well in the Millie Maker because there's 950,000 entries and you have to be different. But for this 2,500 person single entry, you don't need to go off the rails, right? Just play something stronger and you're going to be just fine. So this seems like a case of the wrong lineups going into the wrong contests due to ROIs being averaged. So I think that has a lot to do with it here. Couple questions from Kyler. When I have it set to multi-fill, I can't see individual lineups for some reason. Is there a way to see the lineups when multi-fill is selected? Also had 3 rules set. Not sure if those impacted me. I'll check out the rules in a minute. So you're not going to be able to see the lineups with multi-fill, but if you do want to see the lineups, then you just need to take the additional time of using single fill, but using it one contest at a time. So then that would basically be, hey, I'm going to go into single fill. I'm going to select one contest. I'm going to let my lineups update. I'm going to let the lineups load. I'm going to go through here. I'm going to make sure I like the exposures. Okay, great. I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go to the next contest and do the next one. But I'm going to do them one at a time as opposed to doing them all together. So I think that's the biggest difference there. If you do want to group them, I would group them by either max entries or size, right? So like I would be okay grouping the two $12 together and filling those as a group if you need to save time. But I definitely don't want to group my two $12 single entries with my $5 150 max milli maker, right? Like then the ROIs are going to get all jumbled. Like this is why we would recommend people do build with single entry and 3 max and then a separate build with 20 max and 150 max, kind of for this exact thing that we're seeing in the sim ROIs. So that's basically where that came from. So this is like a mini stack rule. And then using no more than one running back per team, and then don't use opposing players. So I don't think these two rules for sure don't impact much. This second rule is just like a mini secondary stack correlation rule. You know, it's fine to use if you want. I'm not going to say it's bad or anything like that, but it doesn't look like it's like killing you or anything, right? So I think that you're a lot closer than your sim ROIs are telling you. I think some of these changes to workflow and how you set up approaching the contest and filling them and analyzing them, I think is actually going to make a big improvement. So I would make those small changes there, and I think you'll be just fine. All right. Good stuff there. Happy that Kyler volunteered because I think those changes will be really beneficial to their process. So I'm excited to see how that ends up panning out at the end of week 2 here. But let's keep it rolling. It's going to be our last person for the show. It's going to be Unreal. And then we have a couple people lined up for tomorrow. But if anybody wants to sign up for tomorrow, there's still plenty of time to do so by dropping your DK username in the office hours channel. So let's get the screen back up. All right. So we got Unreal here. Going to go to contests. So a lot of different builds going on here. Contest selection looks good. We see a really strong balance of single entries and 3 maxes. Like this is what we want to see, right? We want to see people playing all of these. So this is great. Now let's jump into one of these. Let's go to the quarter jukebox. It's been like our contest of the week. Let the lineups load. And just waiting for this contest to load still. Takes a little bit, but it's all right. Okay. Let's hop over to users. Filter for 20 entries. Sort by sim ROI. So this is great. This is one of our top sim ROIers. 74% is actually, I think, the highest person that we've studied here on the show. I think previous high was like 65%. So they're up at like 73%. So this is great. Unreal. Awesome set of lineups. 49.8 salary. One average dupe. Kind of interesting there. Could just be due to the raw size of the contest, a little bit of variance. Semi-average score in the 127 range, so right in between 126, 128, where a lot of our good sim ROIers have been grading out in this contest. So all that's right in line. Don't think we're going to learn a bunch more from this screen here, considering how well their lineups graded out. So this came from Swap 2. So let's see, low 150 max, low 20 max, low single entry, flagship, league, and then swaps. So they're divvying this up by size, right? Like, hey, I have a build for my 150, build for my 20s, which is 3 contests, build for some low dollar single entries, build for flagship single entries, right? However, they're determining what the differences are, maybe just based on the contest sim field lineup options here. I think it's fine, right? If you have the time, you want to split it up, totally cool. So let's jump into this low 20 max build here, which is where this quarter is going to live. Okay, using multi-fill, using ROI, target ROI by contest, 3 uniques per lineup. No filters, few rules. So heavy on the correlation here with the rules, right? So basically saying, hey, I want at least QB +2 with a bring back at a minimum. And they end up with a lot of those lineups. I'm not really sure how these QB +1s sneak in here. But kind of weird. The QB +3 with a run back makes sense. I don't know where these no QB stacks come from either. No tight end in the flex. Personal choice. Don't use players against opposing defense. Default rule. Good stuff there. No changes, minimax salary. No changes to sliders. So what I'll say is that, hey, if you're setting rules and you're grading out well, don't change it, right? Doing something right. If it's working, great. No reason to make an adjustment there. I don't know exactly what setting Richardson and Josh Allen to max 99 exposure is, but it's cool. Leave it alone. But other than that, pretty hands off, right? I'm not 100% sure why the sim average destination ROI is showing negative. Feels kind of weird. I might just have to like sort the lineups by a different metric and then resort them after the fact. But all in all, this looks good, right? They have removed from pool on. They are putting their highest prize pool contest first and the next lowest and the next lowest. So all in all, really strong set of lineups, really high sim ROI, good contest selection, few rules here that are working for them. That's great. And this all looks really, really good. So really, really strong set of lineups. All right. Quick question in the Discord. Can you talk about multi-fill versus single fill? What's the difference? We had a really long discussion about this today on office hours. If you missed it, you can go to our YouTube channel and go to our live streams and watch today's show. But if you want to drop this question in the office hours channel in Discord, I'd be happy to talk about it again tomorrow. I know people are getting used to it and want to understand it better, but this show specifically is, for like reviewing builds. So I kind of don't want to blur the lines a little bit. I kind of want to keep office hours for questions and keep this show about build reviews here. But we talked about it today. Chances are we'll talk about it tomorrow, and we will keep talking about it until everyone feels comfortable with understanding the differences between the two. But with that said, great show today, everybody. Had, solid build reviews. And I hope that, the users here got something out of it. I will be right back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, for our next show. If anybody wants to sign up, drop your DK username in the office hours channel in Discord. And until tomorrow, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.